Life can throw you some serious curveballs, right? One minute you're cruising along, and the next, you're staring at a mountain of bills with no idea how you're going to climb it. That was my reality a few years back. I had a decent job, nothing fancy, but it paid the bills, or at least it used to. Then, the company downsized, and suddenly I was part of a restructuring. That's a fancy word for "you're fired." I scrambled, picking up freelance gigs here and there, but the income was wildly unpredictable. The one constant in my financial nightmare was my rent. Every first of the month, that payment loomed over me like a dark cloud. My apartment wasn't anything special, but it was home. The thought of losing it, of having to pack up my life into boxes because I couldn't afford it anymore, was soul-crushing. I started cutting back on everything. Dinners became instant noodles, nights out became nights in, and my savings account dwindled to almost nothing. The stress was unreal. I'd lie awake at night, my heart pounding, just doing the math over and over in my head, trying to find a solution that wasn't there. Each time I had to email my landlady, Mrs. Gable, to ask for a few more days to pay, my stomach would twist into knots. She was an older woman, always polite, but I could feel the tension growing. I was sure my time was running out. I imagined the eviction notice taped to my door, the final, humiliating symbol of my failure. I spent my days hunting for a stable job and my nights dreading the inevitable. I felt completely and utterly trapped, like I was sinking in quicksand with no one to pull me out. Little did I know, the most unexpected lifeline was about to be thrown my way, from the last person I ever would have guessed. So there I was, another month, another rent payment I couldn't make on time. I'd been avoiding Mrs. Gable's calls, which I knew was childish, but the shame was just too much. Finally, I mustered up the courage to face the music. I rehearsed my apology, my plea for just a little more time. I walked over to her apartment, which was in the same building, and knocked on her door, my hand trembling slightly. She opened it and looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. It wasn't anger, but it wasn't friendly either. "John," she said, her voice even. "I was expecting you." I launched into my prepared speech, stammering about a freelance payment that was delayed and how sorry I was. She just stood there, listening patiently. When I finally ran out of words, she just sighed and said, "Come in. Let's have some tea." I was completely thrown off. I expected a lecture, a final warning, anything but an invitation for tea. I followed her into her apartment, which was cluttered but cozy, filled with books and old photographs. She sat me down at her kitchen table and started preparing the tea without another word. The silence was deafening. My mind was racing. Was this a let him down gently before kicking him out kind of tea? Was she going to tell me stories about other tenants who failed to pay and now live on the street? I braced myself for the worst. The minutes stretched on, feeling like hours. My anxiety was through the roof. I just wanted her to get it over with. Finally, she placed a steaming mug in front of me and sat down. She looked at me, her gaze direct, and said, "John, we need to talk about your situation." "But it's not what you think." She took a slow sip of her tea, her eyes studying me over the rim of her mug. I just sat there, frozen, waiting for the axe to fall. "John," she began, her voice soft but firm. "I know you've been struggling. I'm not blind." I opened my mouth to apologize again, but she held up a hand to stop me. "Let me finish. My husband, Arthur, he passed away 2 years ago." I mumbled my condolences, confused about where this was going. "He was the handyman of this building," she continued, a sad smile on her face. "He could fix anything. Leaky faucets, creaky floorboards, a flickering light, you name it. Since he's been gone, things have started to fall apart. Little things, mostly. But they're piling up. I'm getting older, and I can't keep up with it all. Hiring professionals for every little job is draining my funds faster than I'd like." She paused, looking around her apartment as if seeing all the small imperfections I hadn't noticed. Then she turned her gaze back to me. "I've seen you. I saw you help Mrs. Rodriguez with her stuck window last month. And I saw you patching up that loose tile in the hallway." I was stunned. I did those things without thinking, just small acts of kindness. I never imagined she'd noticed. "You're good with your hands, John," she said. Like Arthur was. My heart was pounding, but for a different reason now. This wasn't the conversation I had prepared for. It was something else entirely. She leaned forward, her expression serious. "So, I have a proposal for you. A way for you to stay here and for me to get the help I need." I just stared at her, my mind trying to process what was happening. A proposal? Was this some kind of trick? She saw the confusion on my face and chuckled softly. "It's quite simple, really," she said. You've got skills I need. I've got an apartment you need. I propose a trade. My jaw must have dropped. A trade? I echoed, my voice barely a whisper. Yes, she said, nodding. You become the building's handyman. You take care of the small repairs, the general upkeep. Leaky pipes, painting, patching walls, things like that. Anything major, we'll still call in a professional, of course. But for the day-to-day stuff, you'd be my guy. She took another sip of tea, letting the idea sink in. I was a decent handyman, a skill I'd picked up from my dad. I'd always enjoyed fixing things, but I'd never considered it as anything more than a hobby. And in exchange for your work, she continued, her eyes twinkling, I will waive your rent. The words hit me like a physical force. Waive my rent? All of it? I was speechless. It sounded too good to be true. I must have looked skeptical because she smiled again. It's a fair deal, John. You'd be saving me a fortune in repair bills and saving me the headache of finding reliable people. And you'd have a stable place to live without the financial stress. You can focus on finding a new full-time job without worrying about a roof over your head. What do you say? I couldn't form a coherent sentence. All the anxiety, the sleepless nights, the constant fear of homelessness. It felt like a massive weight was being lifted off my shoulders. It was the most unexpected, most generous offer I had ever received. After a moment that felt like an eternity, I finally found my voice. Yes, I said, the word coming out with more emotion than I intended. Yes, Mrs. Gable, absolutely yes. And just like that, everything changed. We spent the next hour hashing out the details. We agreed on a set number of hours per week I'd dedicate to maintenance tasks. She gave me a key to the small workshop in the basement that had been her husband's, filled with tools I could only have dreamed of owning. It was like an inheritance of trust. The very next day I got to work. My first task was fixing a persistent drip in the third-floor bathroom that had been driving the tenant crazy. The feeling of tightening that final nut and hearing the sweet, sweet sound of silence was more satisfying than any freelance check I'd ever cashed. I went from tenant to handyman overnight. The other residents in the building, who used to just give me polite, distant nods, started greeting me with warmth. They'd stop me in the hall to thank me for fixing a squeaky door or replacing a burnt-out light bulb in the stairwell. I wasn't just the guy who was late on his rent anymore. I had a purpose. I was contributing to our little community. The best part? The crippling anxiety that had been my constant companion for months simply vanished. I could sleep through the night. I could buy groceries without having a panic attack at the checkout counter. The freedom was intoxicating. With the pressure of rent gone, I could be more selective about my freelance work and dedicate real time to my job search. Mrs. Gable was true to her word. She was a fair and kind boss. Sometimes she'd bring me a plate of cookies while I was working or just sit and chat with me, telling me stories about her husband. I learned that he had also lost his job in his late 40s and turned to being a handyman to support his family. The parallel wasn't lost on me. I felt a connection to this man I'd never met. A few months into our arrangement, I was in the basement organizing the workshop when Mrs. Gable came down. She was holding an old, dusty photo album. I thought you might like to see this, she said, her voice soft. We sat on a couple of old crates and she opened the album. It was filled with pictures of her and Arthur. Pictures of them when they were young, on their wedding day, and pictures of him proudly standing next to various building projects he'd completed. He had the same look of satisfaction on his face that I felt every time I fixed something. He loved this building, she said, tracing a finger over a photo of him painting a fence. He poured his heart and soul into it. He always said that taking care of a home is taking care of the people inside it. Her words really struck me. I realized that my work wasn't just about fixing leaky faucets. It was about maintaining a community, a safe and comfortable space for everyone who lived there. It was about honoring Arthur's legacy. This job had given me so much more than free rent. It gave me back my dignity. It gave me a sense of purpose and connection that I had been missing for so long. The cloud of financial dread was gone, replaced by the quiet confidence that comes from being useful, from being part of something bigger than yourself. It was a rental deal, yes, but it felt more like a gift. A second chance wrapped in an old toolbox and offered with a cup of tea. It taught me that sometimes help comes from the most unexpected places, and that a home is more than just four walls and a roof. It's the people who care for it and for each other. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories that remind us of the good in the world.